The film opens not with violence, but with silence, the kind that follows a lifetime of battles. Ip Man sits alone in a small Hong Kong clinic. The doctor's voice is calm but unyielding, delivering a reality that strikes harder than any opponent. You must prepare for the worst. The diagnosis is clear. The timeline is not. But Ip Man understands. He walks out into the humid Hong Kong afternoon, the city noisy and restless, but his mind still. Every step from the clinic feels heavier, as if the ground itself knows the weight he now carries. His body is weakening, yet his spirit remains the same, disciplined, observant, unshaken. Suddenly, a commotion draws his attention. A group of young men from a nearby school corner a smaller student. Ip Man watches the conflict unfold, noticing the subtle shift of fear in the younger boy's posture. He intervenes with the precision of a man who has spent his life controlling storms. A few movements, gentle, swift, decisive, disarm the aggressors without anyone even realizing how fast they lost control. The boy escapes. The older students retreat in humiliation. Ip Man simply adjusts his collar and walks away. This moment, small yet symbolic, foreshadows everything that will unfold in America. A world where youth are bullied, cultures are suppressed, and discipline is forgotten.
The night after the confrontation at the school becomes a quiet storm inside San Francisco's Chinatown. Word spreads with the speed of rumor and the weight of truth. People whisper about the man from Hong Kong who stood his ground against uniformed Marines, not with brutality, but with an elegance that unsettled everyone who witnessed it. Children retell the event with wide-eyed wonder. Elders discuss it behind closed doors with a mixture of pride and fear. And somewhere inside the American military base, a bruise blooms on a Marine's shoulder like a reminder of humiliation. Barton studies reports of the incident with a steady, slow-burning rage. It is not the damage to his men that angers him, but the fracture it creates in his authority. In his world, respect is taken, not earned, and he refuses to let a foreign martial artist expose the cracks in his discipline. Meanwhile, Ip Man stands at the window of his small room, the moonlight resting lightly on his shoulders. His breath is steady, but his thoughts pull in multiple directions, toward his son, toward his illness, toward the growing tension in this unfamiliar land. He came seeking a solution for Qing's future, yet he now finds himself caught inside a complex web of cultural divides, egos, and misunderstandings. Still, he knows that battles are not always chosen. Some arrive like storms that cannot be avoided. The distance between father and son. At dawn, Ip Man calls home. The static of the overseas line crackles like distant fire. Qing answers reluctantly. The young boy hesitates, torn between irritation and longing. He wants independence, yet he misses his father's guidance more than he is willing to admit. Ip Man tries to speak gently, but the words fall into the gap that grief and distance have carved between them. When the call ends, he stands quietly, knowing the truth. Time is slipping, and he has not yet helped his son find solid ground. The cancer reminds him with every passing hour that no lesson is guaranteed a tomorrow. But he also knows he cannot abandon what unfolds in front of him here. San Francisco is not just another city. It is a mirror of his son's struggles. It is a place where young people lose their way, where identity becomes a battlefield, where elders guard tradition like a fragile flame. Protecting this place, even for a moment, feels like protecting Qing from afar. Danny and the weight of heritage. Danny walks the hallways of his school the next day with a different posture. Not stronger, not fearless, just less alone. He saw Ip Man stand for him, not with force, but with dignity. And that dignity becomes his anchor. But school is a microcosm of the larger world. He faces the same mockery, the same cold stares from classmates who believe difference is weakness. Their insults have sharpened with time, fueled now by resentment from the dance performance chaos. Danny tries to keep his head high, but the weight grows heavier. At home, his mother watches him quietly. She sees both the hurt and the silent determination. She knows that Ip Man's presence has given Danny something precious, permission to be proud of who he is. The Chinese Benevolent Association's doubts. Across Chinatown, Wan Zonghua gathers the leadership of the Chinese Benevolent Association. The elders sit in a circle, each man holding on to tradition like a lifeline. They debate Ip Man with the severity of men discussing a potential threat. To them, the fight at the school represents danger. Marines are powerful, connected, and unpredictable. They fear that Ip Man's actions will bring consequences they cannot control. Juan listens, absorbing both fear and pride. Deep down, he knows the truth. He admires Ip Man. He respects the calm confidence, the mastery, the ability to bend chaos without breaking. But admiration is a luxury he cannot afford. As head of the association, he must protect the entire community, not a single visiting master. He sighs, conflicted, knowing that San Francisco is changing, and maybe he, too, must change with it. The Marine base brewing with tension. Inside the military base, Barton pushes his men harder than ever. The dojo echoes with the thud of fists against training mats and the bark of commands that carry an undercurrent of obsession. His anger is a living force now, reshaping every drill, every stripe, every lesson. Hartman, a young Marine fascinated by Chinese martial arts, feels the shift. He sees how Barton's pride has evolved into something dangerous. Barton is not training soldiers to defend themselves. He is preparing them to send a message written with violence. Rumors circulate among the ranks about the old Chinese master who humiliated them. Barton fuels these stories, twisting fact into provocation. The Marines begin to believe that their honor has been threatened, and Barton ensures that every man knows whose fault that is. Ip Man and the principal, a shared purpose. Ip Man visits Danny's school again, hoping to speak with the principal. This time, the tension is thick, the atmosphere quieter. The previous incident caused waves that have not yet settled. The principal walks with Ip Man across the empty playground. She has seen educators fighting one kind of battle: policies, budgets, discipline. But this man fights a different war, one etched into the posture of every child caught between cultures. She confides in him about the increasing hostility toward Chinese students, the pressure from parents, and the quiet fear that diversity is becoming a target. Ip Man listens, offering his presence rather than promises. He understands that protecting children requires more than martial arts. Sometimes it requires standing in places where others refuse to stand. In her eyes, he sees the reflection of the values he tried to give his son: compassion, resilience, clarity. And as he leaves the school, he knows that whatever comes next, he will not allow that environment to crumble under intimidation. The Bruce Lee connection deepens. Bruce Lee visits him soon after, bringing energy that shifts the quiet room into a space filled with vibrant, restless ambition. He is at the height of his evolution, teaching foreigners, challenging norms, breaking traditions with purpose. He senses the tension in Chinatown. He warns Ip Man that Barton is not a man who accepts humiliation. Bruce has felt the pressure from the Marines firsthand. He knows what a bruised ego in a uniform can become. Ip Man thanks him silently, appreciating the bond they share: master and student, tradition and innovation. They are mirrors of each other's values, each shaped by different worlds, yet connected by the same discipline. Bruce leaves with a promise unspoken: if trouble comes, he will stand beside his teacher. The Marines make their move. Night falls again. Barton sends a group of Marines into Chinatown under the pretext of patrol training. But their real purpose is to intimidate, to reclaim a sense of control, to send a message that the military has not forgotten nor forgiven. They walk through the narrow streets in formation, boots echoing, presence heavy. Shops dim their lights, families retreat behind doors. Chinatown shrinks under the weight of boots and authority. When they spot teenagers practicing lion dancing in a cramped alley, they confront them. What began as verbal intimidation escalates quickly. A drum is kicked over, a costume is torn. The proud cultural practice becomes collateral damage. The sound draws Ip Man from a nearby tea house. He moves toward the commotion with the silent steadiness of a tide rolling in. The Marines turn to face him. The tension snaps like a drawn bowstring. Ip Man steps forward, not with aggression, but with the same calm that once tamed Hong Kong's storms. His presence alone commands hesitation.
Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the nearest grocery store is 14 miles away. The nearest pharmacy is across the highway, and the only place left in the neighborhood to buy anything is a single gas station mart selling expired snacks behind a bulletproof window. This is not a future scenario. This is happening right now in dozens of American cities. Experts call it the retail desert effect, a phenomenon where businesses leave so quickly that large neighborhoods become no-buy zones, areas where people physically cannot purchase daily essentials. In cities like Baltimore, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Oakland, entire districts are now mapped as grocery deserts, pharmacy deserts, banking deserts, retail blackouts. When you remove places to buy, people leave. When people leave, businesses flee even faster. It is a cycle with no off switch. And once a neighborhood becomes a retail desert, recovery becomes nearly impossible without billions in intervention, which most cities simply do not have. Section 8. The $45 billion crime wave that no one can stop. Behind closed doors, retail CEOs are admitting a truth they refuse to tell the public. We are losing this war. Retail theft, once just petty shoplifting, has evolved into something far more aggressive. Organized crews emptying full aisles in minutes. Car-sharing theft rings hitting multiple stores in one night. flash mob raiding using social media coordination, inside employees feeding information, resale networks funneling stolen goods online at industrial scale. Last year, U.S. retailers reported over $45 billion in losses, and analysts believe the real number is twice as high because most stores don't even bother reporting anymore. What shocked economists is not the money lost, but the speed at which stores are deciding to shut down. Chains once considered unbreakable, Walgreens, CVS, Target, and Walmart, are now strategically withdrawing from large cities because they simply cannot absorb the losses anymore. When the biggest players leave, smaller local shops collapse instantly. The result is a retail collapse cascading from the center outward. Section 9. How online scams replace real stores in collapsing cities. When physical stores disappear, people turn to online shopping. But in collapsing urban markets, something unexpected is happening. Online fraud grows faster than online shopping. Families who no longer have access to real stores are ordering groceries from fake websites, buying electronics from counterfeit ads, falling for scam local delivery apps, getting tricked by cloned brand pages, losing money to fake same-day service operators. In cities like Cleveland, Detroit, and St. Louis, the Federal Trade Commission has recorded an explosion of scams directly tied to the disappearance of local brick-and-mortar stores. When you remove legitimate options, people become vulnerable to artificial ones, and scammers move faster than regulators. The real tragedy is that these scams target the same neighborhoods that lost physical stores in the first place. Collapse breeds collapse. Section 10. The psychology of abandonment when cities give up on themselves. Beyond the data, beyond the economics, beyond the headlines, there is something deeper happening in these no-buy cities. A psychological pattern. Residents describe the same emotional pattern. It feels like the city stopped caring. Every time a store closes, hope leaves with it. I walk down the block and everything is shuttered. It feels like we're not supposed to live here anymore. Urban psychologists warn that retail collapse triggers depopulation, depression, distrust, anger, community fragmentation, because when every store around you is boarded up, you don't feel like a citizen living inside a functioning city. You feel like a survivor trapped in a place society has abandoned. And that emotional collapse is often the final stage, happening long before the city officially admits it is in decline. Section 11. The perfect storm. Why these 10 cities hit the breaking point first. The 10 cities we are analyzing did not collapse randomly. They all share a dangerous combination of factors: extreme retail theft, rapid population decline, bankrupt local governments, rising commercial rents, loss of corporate trust, online fraud replacing real stores, deteriorating public safety, shrinking middle class, collapsing tax revenue, no major employers returning. When these conditions overlap, cities fall into what economists call a consumer blackout zone, areas where normal economic activity cannot survive. Some cities will adapt, some will shrink, and some may never recover. Section 12. Is this the future of America? This is the final uncomfortable question. If 10 U.S. cities have already reached a point where you cannot buy groceries, you cannot buy medicine, you cannot shop safely, you cannot find open businesses, you cannot trust online sellers, then how long until dozens more join them? Is this the new American reality? Is this the beginning of a nationwide retail restructuring? Or is it the start of something far more serious, a slow unraveling of urban life as we know it? In Part 4, we will uncover the next 12 cities heading toward the same collapse, the industries most at risk, and whether America can still reverse this trajectory. The story isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning.